Hey there, and welcome to Conversations
Hi.
at the Well. In this episode, we're going to be talking about our family vacation. That was kind of a vacation, but not really, but kind of, but not really.
Let's call it a trip.
Family trip. We're going to talk about our family trip. Spending time with family, spending time going back to our hometowns and everything in between. Stick with us. We will see you at the well. Before we get started with our next episode, I want to encourage you, if you're watching us on YouTube, to go down to the little thumbs up button, like the video, and get subscribed so you get notifications whenever we drop new content. Also, if you are joining in with us on Facebook or on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, make sure that you're subscribed there. Leave a 5-star review as well as drop a comment so we know that you are listening. Welcome back for another episode of Conversations at the Well. We've been gone for a little bit, but we are finally back. And over this time, what were we doing?
We were traveling.
World traveling. It felt like
we made a lot of stops.
We went from here in Mississippi and we drove over to Atlanta.
Yep.
And we stayed there for a day.
Just overnight.
And then we flew up to Philadelphia.
Yep.
And then we drove down to Delaware.
Yep.
Well, drove down to, where did we go?
That's Delaware, yeah.
Drove down to Dover.
Then
we drove over to Ocean City.
We stopped in Rehoboth.
And then we stayed there for about a week.
Ocean City.
Came back to Dover.
Yep.
Went back to Ocean City.
Yep.
And then went down to Salisbury.
Yep.
And then went back up to Philly.
Yep.
Flew back to Atlanta.
Yep.
And then drove to Mississippi.
It sounds like a lot, but it didn't feel like it did to you. Okay. His eyes are like, no, it felt like it felt like
I was gonna say it felt like a lot because I was the one that did the driving, but no, you drove back the entire way.
Yeah.
So I can't use that excuse, but it felt like a lot for me.
It did.
But anyways, we were doing this entire family trip thing because my grandfather had a surprise 83rd birthday.
Yes.
So family from all over the United States went back to our hometown of Dover, Delaware to celebrate his life and celebrate his legacy and celebrate him in a great celebration.
Yeah, it was really cool because it felt kind of family reunion style, where people came from us came from Mississippi,
North Carolina, Virginia,
just like all over. And those type of gatherings typically don't happen for happy reasons.
Right.
Is my mic not
too
right?
low.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. Those type of things we don't typically have them for happy occasions. Usually, y'all know, it's a funeral, right?
Yeah.
But this was an experience where we got to have a celebration, not a celebration of life, as we call funerals sometimes, but it was like an actual celebration of life, celebrating a birthday. Yeah. And it wasn't like a milestone birthday in that it was 83, but it was just like, 83, we don't know how many birthdays you have left.
And it was good to just have everyone in the room. And I'm sure from his perspective to think that I pretty much had a role in everybody in the room getting here or being a part, whether it was through blood or whether it was through his children. And it was just a great celebration. I got a chance to see my cousins. My cousins are all over. Well, actually, some of them are still in Dover, but a few of them have moved on and with their careers and things like that. So having a chance to see them. One of them was a DJ. The other one was on the microphone. So we were doing some line dancing. It was just a really, really good.
Got a pastor cousin.
Man, I got all kind of family.
Yeah.
And I had not been back to my hometown of Delaware it's been almost since we've been married, maybe.
It was really early in our marriage when you took me to Dover.
Yeah. So there's not a lot that's still back in Dover. So I don't go back that often. But it's always kind of good to get a chance to catch up with people and really reconnect with the part of my life that you've really stayed disconnected from. I'm a whole different person in their eyes. They're going to be Troy versus Vernon.
Yeah.
And they remember me as some small kid versus a grown person. So, and it's always good to have your children give them an opportunity to reconnect with other sides of the family too, which I think is good.
Yeah, and we wanted to go. I wanted to go, and I thought mostly for the kids because we don't get to see that side of the family very often, and just like the extended family, and it's his grandfather on his mom's side, but it's our children's great grandfather.
Yeah.
And so like 4 generations to be in the same room. And interestingly enough, there were a lot of other great grandchildren also in the room. But it just, it's an incredible thought and incredible just experience. I think if I were him, to have seen just like 4 generations of my bloodline in one room.
Yeah, I think it's awesome too that it was for him. And what I mean by that is he's a really steady person. Like he didn't get too excited, he didn't get too angry. Like he's just right in the middle. And to kind of see that moment where he was surprised and he still didn't do much or say much, but just to know that his probably little heart was beating faster, or he was excited, because he's not a very emotive person.
Right.
But I think it was amazing just to kind of have that experience, to get the videos and the photos from that, and just to spend that time with them, which I think was really great.
That was really cool. So, I guess even before then though, so I'm calling this trip the Tour of the Elders.
Oh, interesting. How did you get there?
Because on this trip, we stopped at my parents' house. So that's our children's grandparents, my parents. So they're elders, but like next generation from us.
Old.
They're not old, just like the other generation before us.
So like elders in respect, not age.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Okay.
And then we saw Pop White.
83.
So he's the one that had the birthday party. His mom and Pop were there as well. And so that's like our children's grandparents on his side. And then we went down to Salisbury.
And so in Salisbury are my grandparents on my dad's side. So we had a chance to stop and spend some time with them. And so that's the kids' great grandparents on
your side,
my side. So that was really, really cool to get them. And I don't think the last time we went, Vern was about 1. It was his first birthday, right?
To
Salisbury.
No, we were actually, that's when Salisbury, yes. But when we went to maybe that was the last time we were in Dover, because we went to Shell's house, and Vern and Aaron were there.
Okay. So it was his second time being in their house, Aaron's first time, but Aaron had met them at Easter, Thanksgiving. What was it? Some kind of celebration. There was a bunch of food, so I assumed it was Thanksgiving, but maybe not. But anyways, they had a chance to meet, I guess, from a knowledge perspective, where they're old enough to kind of understand and recognize people. They had a chance to meet them and kind of hang out, which I thought was really, really awesome for them to see their grandchildren on that side, or great grandchildren rather.
Great grandparents.
Great.
Who, the children saw, or the great grandparents?
The great grandparents had a chance to see their great grandchildren.
There you go.
And as they've grown up and matured, which I think was really special. And I think one of the great things that I don't think we take advantage of as often as we should is just a chance to sit down with these people and ask them about their life and their experiences. And what I think, if you dedicate the time to those conversations, you'll find and receive much more wisdom than you would ever expect that you would have gotten. Just through their life experiences. And it just takes asking a question about, how did you get here? What did what brought you to this area geographically, or maybe what was a difficult time in your life that you had to overcome? And I think those conversations that we were able to have through this tour of elders, is that what you're calling it? Tour of elders was super helpful in that respect.
I think the way you asked those questions sounds like an interview. It wasn't really it was just like a conversation, not a tell me about your first time working a job and you ran into a challenge.
So the culture of my family outside of my mom is very kind of stoic. I would say, like, people don't ask a lot of questions. They're not very like, hey, tell me about this or tell me about that. There's a lot of like, don't ask, don't tell kind of stuff. But it's interesting when my wife comes in, because she has no understanding of this couth or how things are going. So she's just asking these questions. I'm like, I wonder that too. Let me listen and see what you have to say. And so she actually led a lot of those conversations and questions. And I learned a lot that I had no idea about, just because she was ignorant enough to ask the question.
Ignorant, maybe, but also I think more intentional.
Yeah,
and the reason why is because I don't have any grandparents.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
All my grandparents have passed away, and there are questions that I wish I had asked. And so having the opportunity to ask your grandparents questions is like really, I like that a lot.
I think it's that, but I also just think it's who you are too.
Really?
Because I don't know that I would feel regret of, oh, I wish I would have asked these questions. Like I would just feel like, okay, and keep moving. So I think part of it is your kind of living vicariously, but I think a lot of it is just who you are and being very, not inquisitive, what's the word? Very curious, and actually asking the questions that make you curious. Like I think I'm curious, but a lot of those questions that in a curiosity area that matter, I probably wouldn't ask for one reason or another. Now, if it was just some random person, I ask you anything. But I think in those areas in which it would matter, I probably wouldn't be the first one to ask. But you just ask.
I'm going to ask because I want to know.
Yeah.
But those conversations were really good. And this is mostly with your grandparents on your dad's side. Because we had, so at the birthday party, everybody was there. So we didn't get a lot of one-on-one time.
It was kind of like a wedding with a head table and, everybody kind of flowing around. But it wasn't a lot of just quiet time to talk.
Yeah. So this is with your dad's parents. And so it was actually our first time there with them where there weren't other family around, I think.
Which I think is super interesting because I think the older you get or the more mature you get in life, the less not holiday time you spend with those people you care about. And it's great because we should spend the holidays and we should, celebrate and do whatever. But there's also something that you're missing out on, just the opportunity to have these one-on-one conversations, to dive a little deeper. Like even at Thanksgiving, it's great. You get a chance to watch the ball game, but how much time are you really spending connecting? And I think that's something that's super valuable that, quite frankly, we need to do more of. Because, it's great to make time around the holidays, but you only get but a piece when you're sharing whomever with so many other people.
And I also like that we were not like you mentioned, like watch the game together, and that's like an activity to do, but I think sometimes that activity takes away from the actual connection of people. And of course, we know in like this day and time and in our just culture, when we spend a great deal of time in front of somebody's screen or listening to someone's voice, thanks for listening today. So there's value in that too, but like having those like actually connecting with the people who are in the same room as you is also something that we should value, but we don't value enough. And typically we experience, with loss, there's loss that's happening all over, and people die before we are ever either expecting or before that we want them to. And there's always this like, oh, I just wish I would have said this or asked that or, done these things together. And so I really, this was not even our intention for this trip, but I'm really glad that we had that time of like just focused connection.
I know one thing that I got out of it is, being an elder, having a chance to sit down and talk with him about just his experience as a pastor. He's been in ministry for seems like ever, not ever, but ever. And so just kind of
talk your whole life.
Yeah, my whole life, and probably even more than that. But just having an opportunity to talk to him about what that process has been like, how it started, like what were you doing before? I mean, our parents and grandparents had this whole other life before the responsibility of family came about, and like being able to ask about what that looks like and what that experience has been like is something that was really instructive and kind of gave a different perspective about what we seem to think is hard. Every generation's life gets a little bit easier, but there are still hard things that they experience. But when you put your hard next to someone of a previous generation's hard, it's like, I guess I do have it made, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. And I also thought I loved that conversation too. So just like broadly speaking, some of the things that we learned was about his grandfather's calling and like what that experience was like for him. And then also when he was going to the church that he pastors now, what that experience was like. Yeah. And that was it was interesting because they shared like the ups and the downs, which I appreciate. Don't just tell me like all the good stuff.
Yeah.
Tell me all of it so that I can, it helps. First of all, it helps the person to become more human, but also can give you insight as to how to get through different challenges that you face.
What to expect. I mean, sometimes we think that every great thing or great decision is supposed to be great. And even when we watch our parents or grandparents move through life, from the sheltered view that we get, it looked great.
Yeah.
But to understand that there was a completely other side of it that they were dealing with, and, maybe even like personally where they were wondering whether they measured up or things like that. They felt these things.
Yeah.
And so it helps us as, youth or, young adults, no matter where you are on that spectrum, it helps us recognize that no matter what we're feeling, we're not abnormal. We're all going through the same stuff.
Yeah.
But, with the wisdom of the knowledge that someone went before you, a lot of times that helps you in your own journey.
Right. And there were, we talk about faith all the time. And I thought that was such a cool thing just to hear like their faith walk through those really tough times. Was so cool. I was like, oh my gosh, I love this conversation because it was like so encouraging to me. Because I was like, oh, they've been through hard things. Like really, like if we had to face that right now, would we have been prepared to walk through it in the same way, and to get through it without like, I think we would have gotten through it, but it would have been really, really tough, I think.
And I think what maturity teaches you is there's a difference between getting through it and getting through it, I guess, correctly.
There you go.
Or with the grace that it takes.
There you go.
And I would have certainly gotten through it.
Yeah.
But, my first thing is like, okay, I don't need you. Like,
yeah.
Which is not a good perspective to have. But to be able to, I'm sure, deal with those thoughts, deal with those opinions, deal with, okay, I don't have to be here for this particular reason, and still come out making the right decision. I think that's where the lesson or that's where the wisdom lies.
Yeah.
To be able to say there is a right way and a wrong way to do things, and to stay consistent and stay correct to the best of your ability, even when those around you may not be choosing that same path.
Yeah, it was great. So that was like one of the conversations, but there were other conversations that you had, I think, that were interesting and perhaps impactful. And this was just like around just some of the other families. So we talked about the elders.
Yes, yeah. So,
but there were also aunts and uncles, aunts, cousins.
So a crazy thing, I've been after college, I went to college in North Carolina. So I moved away from Dover, went to North Carolina. And then after college, I moved down to Atlanta, where I've spent the majority of life before we moved here to Mississippi. And so throughout that time, I've been pretty disconnected from the Delaware family, if you will, maybe being able to count on one hand how many times I've been back to the state of Dover and Delaware. And for me, there's a huge family, mostly of which I've been somewhat disconnected from, but to be in that room with people and see person after person walk up and say, hey, what you've been doing or what I've seen you do on Facebook has been super encouraging, or just to share some encouraging words about what they've been able to see or how our family's growing, things like that. It was much more impactful than I thought, because first and foremost, I don't take positive words well. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Like I don't receive.
You just I don't know if it's that you don't take it well or if you just don't take it.
Yeah.
Like you kind of like, okay.
I just move on to the next thing because I don't know how to respond or what to say.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel uncomfortable. So I'm usually changing the subject or something. But to be able to have those conversations with people who I haven't talked to in a long time and just hear their encouraging words and just, hey, I've listened to your podcast and it's amazing. And, you two are so awesome together. And it's just like, wow. First and foremost, these people who don't have to really care and really care enough to dedicate their time and dedicate their effort to go search and look up stuff.
Yeah.
And then people that are, I think another lesson is people are watching you that you don't even know. Right. And you're inspiring people that you have no idea that you're inspiring. Yeah. And so I thought that was amazing. That was encouraging. And I was telling Desireé on the drive home, like, I know I feel something about it, but I don't really know what it is that I'm feeling, if that makes sense.
Have you been able to name it yet?
No, I haven't spent any more time thinking about it because I think it's easier to just like move forward.
Yeah.
Maybe the word's encouraging. I don't know, but it was, there were some feelings there, but I don't deal with feelings. So.
It was feelings. I felt something. What did I feel? I don't know, but I felt something. Yeah. No, but I appreciated it because I don't think that you often get that kind of feedback. Mm-hmm. Like I can tell you all day, oh, you're great, but you're supposed to say it's great because you're my wife. Mm-hmm. But to hear it from other people, even people that you haven't connected with as often over the years, but
who don't have to say it. You could just walk up and say, "Hey, Troy," and keep it moving. Like you didn't have to spend time.
No, people went out of their way to make sure that you knew that they were watching, that they were listening, and that this what you have been saying and doing has meant something to you. And I think for that alone, the trip was worth it. Mm-hmm. Like because I think you need that. Mm-hmm. And it's also interesting to get that returning to your hometown because you left one way, you came back differently, and also seeing that the seeds that have been sown are like not just, they don't land right here, they don't land at the camera. Yeah, they go beyond that and they're reaching these far places. We know at least in Delaware, we know Virginia, we know North Carolina, and I'm probably missing somebody else's state, but there are people who are the seeds are they're not falling short. They're going out and you're getting something back.
Which I think for each one of you who are listeners out there, I think it's something that is instructive, that whether there's a camera in front of your life or not, whether there's a microphone in front of your mouth or not, like your life is an inspiration to someone else. Yeah. And people are watching you and looking at you and you are inspiring them with every decision you make. I know you sometimes feel like you make the wrong decision. I know you sometimes feel like nobody's watching or maybe your audience isn't as large as you would like it, but you are impactful whether you realize it or not. Yeah. And so what you do with that is what you decide. But for those of you who are wishing I was further or wishing that you could do more, it's completely possible that you are impacting and moving the needle in ways that you don't even know to recognize at this particular point in time. Yeah.
And even people who may have thought, does my life matter? Mm-hmm. Does it impact someone else? And here's the thing. There are people that you have had maybe a peripheral relationship with. You've kind of maybe brushed. You may have known each other by name, or maybe you didn't know each other by name. But when something bad occurred to that person, you still felt it. And so similarly, even if there are people on the peripheral of your life or people who are very well connected to you, what happens to you impacts others. And so don't ever feel like your life is not of value. Don't ever feel like your life is not of impact, because just the way that humans are made, we are connected. Mm-hmm. And no, you may not mean everything to everyone, but you mean something to someone. So I want to encourage you, like if you happen to be in a this kind of turned dark, but if you happen to be in a dark place, and you've been questioning your life or questioning your value, this is a message to say that your life does in fact matter, and we need you here, and we want you to continue, and we want you to keep putting out the effort, because although it may not have grown to what you want it to be yet, the seeds are planted, and keep plowing, keep doing what you need to do, take care of it, and eventually you will see the growth, eventually you will see the fruit. So yeah, that was not how I saw this conversation going, but there we go.
And I think there's a difference between what we see and what's there to be seen. And what I mean by that is,
that's real deep. Wait a minute. Run that back.
There's a difference between what we see and what is there to be seen.
Okay.
So, for example, like you guys can't see, but we're in the back of the well, and there's a whole lot of stuff going on. I'm glad you all can't see that. So there's a difference between what you can see through the camera and what's there to be seen in these tables and chairs and boxes, 6 Christmas trees and tools and nail guns and everything, ottoman, like it's there to be seen, but it's all about your perspective. And I think too often we rely only upon our senses for that perspective, but what we have to recognize is there is a perspective that's outside of our senses. And so I was just looking up, there's a scripture or a Bible verse in 2 Kings chapter 6 in which the prophet is surrounded, or it seems like with his natural eyes, he's surrounded by the enemy, and his secondhand person or servant is like, oh my goodness, what's going on? This is crazy. We're about to die. They're going to close in on us. And the prophet has the ability to see what's there to be seen versus what he can only see. And he prays to God and says, open up his eyes. Lord, open the eyes of these men so they can see. Then the Lord opened their eyes, and they looked, and there they were inside of Samaria. Actually, this may be the wrong one. It's the wrong one. Oh, here we go. Verse 17. So Elijah prayed, "O Lord, open his eyes so that he may see." Then the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he looked and saw the hill full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. And what's happening in this story is, like I said, Elisha was surrounded by things in the natural realm. But of course, he's a prophet, and he could see more than what the natural eyes could see. And what was actually happening was that he was surrounded by angels and chariots of fire that were there to protect him. And what does that mean for your life and mine? It means that when we're looking out at the impact we have on the world, when we're looking out on the impact we have on the people around us, sometimes we can feel like we don't matter. But that's only because we're seeing with our natural eyes. Perhaps you're checking likes, perhaps you're looking at your phone and who's called and checked in on you. But there's so much more that's around. And if there's one thing that you can do to really help yourself, is maybe just pray that same prayer and saying, Lord, open my eyes so I can see what's really happening in this season of my life, and how my life impacts those people who are around me. Because every single person who's listening, every single person who will come into contact with you is being impacted by your presence. And whether you just smile at someone at the grocery store, or whether you spend time having a conversation with them at your job, like, you are so important, and your impact is felt far beyond what you know.
And I'm curious, does the experience that you had and then from the scripture and like all of this put together, like, does it change anything for your life? Do you, like, I'm curious.
So there's 2 answers. I think there's the answer you would expect, in which, it changes everything. It makes me look at things differently. But I don't think that would be completely true and transparent. So how I live my life is, I'm very much about moving forward and getting to the next thing and getting to the next thing. So I hadn't thought about any of this since we left. But looking back on it, it was like, well, I really see what you're saying. And I see how all of these things matter. And I don't know why it was so important for all of this to happen and for us to receive all of this in this moment. But looking back, I know it was purposeful. And so, always. So for it to be purposeful, and for it to accomplish what it was set out to do, I need to spend the time to go back and think about those things and ask for my eyes to be open, like I'm talking about to the camera, to figure out what's actually going on here. Because it was, we talked about the path we had to take to get there and get everything done. It was a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot of work,
and we almost
money.
And almost didn't go.
Yeah, because it was a lot of purpose, a lot of stuff, and a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I think there was a reason, and I think it's doing myself, and in your situation, yourself, a disservice to pass through that experience and pass through that situation without spending the time to say, what was I supposed to get throughout this time?
Yeah. So
you're gonna do your question?
You're gonna do that?
Well, I think it's a great thing to do on the Sabbath.
Yeah, I was gonna say we have a Sabbath tomorrow. You ready? You're not ready for the Sabbath, but that's at least you can make that as a key point to consider.
Because I think it was something. I don't think it was nothing.
Oh, it was absolutely something.
My wife tells me it was absolutely something. But spending and dedicating the time to figure out what that is, I think is how you create a more purposeful life throughout all of your experiences. When you go through something strange or abnormal, to go back and say, there's always a why.
Yeah.
What was the why?
Right.
And diving into that.
Yeah. I love that. I love that for you, babe.
Oh my goodness. You just want to make my Sabbath full of more work.
No, I want you to make your Sabbath full of God.
Okay. I'll take that.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
And that's going to be like, if that's the draw, then I'm for it.
Anything else that happened this weekend or this past week?
I didn't want to bring this up. I'm going to bring it up.
Okay.
We went for a walk and there was a truck.
So I don't know if you follow
talk about perspective
us on Facebook or me on Facebook, but so we were walking in the neighborhood, and so we're walking, and she's walking next to me, and to our left, like immediate left, is a black SUV parked in the driveway. It's near the back of the driveway, and in front of it is
you call that the back of the driveway? Wow.
It was closest to the road.
The back of the driveway. Oh man, this is because again,
the part of the driveway that's closest to the road.
So you go in the back.
Huh.
Ah.
But it's the back of the driveway because it's farther from the house. The back of the driveway can't be closest to the house.
Why not?
If I said park in the back of the driveway, where are you going to put the cars?
I would park closest to the house.
So if the kids were about to go outside and play, and I said park the cars in the back of the driveway.
Well, we're in the house. If we're in the house, then I'm thinking the back is closest to the road. So
we're driving into the neighborhood, and I said park in the back of the driveway. You would park closest to the house.
Yeah.
Y'all see what I got to deal with?
So this is about perspective, because the whole point of this is we were walking, we saw a SUV.
Be specific.
We saw an SUV that was at the closest to the mailbox, close to the road and the mailbox.
The black SUV was parked there, and in front of it was a black sports car, Maserati.
Or from the perspective we were, it was behind.
It was closest to the house. Okay. And so we had this conversation about what is behind the black SUV. Now remember, you got the driveway, black SUV closest to the road.
This is not helping. This is not, you got to face it to them.
Okay. So if this is the driveway, black SUV closest to the road, and then closest to the house is the black Maserati car.
Yes.
And we're standing here in the street.
Yes.
And so the question was, what is behind the black SUV? And my statement was the trash cans, which are on the street, is behind the black SUV. But she was saying behind the SUV was the black
It was a Maserati. Yeah.
Even though the SUV was pointing towards the house.
Which could be relevant or could not be, because at that time when we were walking away from it, I didn't know which way the truck was facing, the SUV was facing. And so from my perspective, from the road, from the front of the driveway in your perspective, or the back of the driveway from my perspective, it was behind the SUV.
The only thing that would matter is which way the SUV is facing, because it can't be behind the SUV if it's in front of it. in front and behind as it pertains to the SUV all has to do with which way the SUV
But
was
why
pointing.
would you go from the perspective of the SUV and not from your perspective?
Because you're referencing the SUV.
It's still, I get the logic.
That's like me telling you, go stand in front of Vernon, and you go stand behind his back. It doesn't make sense.
So is the door in front or behind the camera?
The door is behind the camera.
Behind the camera, because it's facing that. But from my perspective, it's like I'm facing this way. It's in front of me, so it's in front of the camera.
That doesn't make any sense at all.
But anyway, that's about perspective. And it was very eye-opening that our perspectives are quite different.
And when you go to my Facebook page, there's a post where I asked the world about this.
However,
now, granted, I wasn't completely, the picture was taken at a little bit different of a perspective.
Thank you.
But as you read through all 99 responses, there's only one response in support of her opinion.
Yeah, and we were the only right ones. Crystal, and I appreciate, thank you, Crystal. Thank you.
Everybody else had a lot of sense and logic in their minds. So go to the Facebook page if you have a chance, and go and chime in, because I'm sure you'll all be on my side.
Or better yet, maybe we need to post it to the YouTube page. Can you do that?
Drop your comment below as to if behind means on the other side or behind means
behind. And then tell us why, please. We need perspective. We need to know.
And it's okay. Y'all can tell her she's wrong. She has thick skin. I don't know how she got this perspective, but anyways,
I'm still standing on it because it's 100%.
I still love her because she's cute.
Thank you. I'm also smart, so let's not forget that part. On camera, this is what you gonna do?
I'm just saying, behind is behind and in front is in front.
I'm still smart.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining in with us for Conversations at the Well. We hope that you spend some time thinking about your loved ones and thinking about spending some time and gaining some wisdom before all that's left is for you to have that last, celebration of life. Like, let's truly celebrate life and spend time with those who matter to us, no matter what your relationship is, because you'll definitely gain some more experience and gain some more understanding through your time. What you may find is the time you dedicate now may end up helping and supporting you more so than it can impact them.
And a special shout out to our family and friends around the country that are listening. Family. We love y'all. Thank you so much for your encouraging words. It really means a lot to us because we just started doing this because we wanted to. But the fact that you all tune in, you listen, and you tell us about it, it's really cool. And we continue to hope that you share it with people who you think will find it interesting. And we hope that some of the things, at least, hopefully all of the things, but at least something, you get something out of these that's helpful for you in your life.
As long as you don't get her perspective on the front versus the back. Thank you so much for joining in with us, and we will see you next week.
Bye.